because that's the only color they make the Prowler in. One car I've always had an unexplained and irrational affinity for is a Plymouth Prowler. And it's probably partially a consequence of me growing up in the 90s and being a 90s child. I loved everything produced by Dodge of that era, even the Ram and the Dakota. Their styling was just progressive, it was on point, and reading about the new Prowler in Automobile magazine when PJ O'Rourke wrote about it, it did me in for that car. And had I the foresight at the time, I would have been pre-ordering Prowlers and flipping them for a massive profit, but I didn't figure that out until about 10 years later.
You couldn't flip a Prowler new.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, you could.
What?
Yes, you could. Yes, they were.
It was a boomer dream car.
Yeah.
Like,
The PT Cruisers were going for like $2-3 grand over sticker. I remember walking into the Dodge dealer and they had a pre-order list for the PT Cruiser and it was like the whole wall. Chrysler was on fire at the time. Anyway, I still will own a Prowler at some point in my life, probably only for an hour, because everybody keeps telling me what terrible cars they are. And I get it. They have a slush box transmission, they have terrible seats, a V6, and all that could have been fixed with a V8 and a 5-speed, but I still just want to own one if only to go get ice cream in once. Being in town for Radwood, I feel like I'm in a safe space to talk about my love for somewhat unloved 90s cars with other like-minded people. This manifested itself in an interesting way when I was a child. So early on, of course, I started collecting Matchbox cars. And not just collecting them, but doing all sorts of things with them. I would modify them, I would cut them up, I would recreate accident scenes, and I would try to damage my Matchbox properly, but it was annoying because they didn't have crumple zones, so you could never actually wreck them properly to look like a real car wreck. I was all about realism, so I enjoyed driving my cars on you'd buy the carpet cities with roads, and I was always annoyed because they weren't to scale properly, and I wanted to drive them and park them correctly, and I loved ambulances and everything with sirens, police cars and stuff like that. I would also trade them quite a bit. I remember one time one of my older friends who grew out of Matchbox was selling a bunch of his, so I'd meet him in the church basement after church and he'd bring a bunch of them and I'd make offers on them. I started my shrewd negotiation very early, and I'd buy some of them and I wouldn't buy other ones. And because I was all about realism, I would never buy any of the Hot Wheels concept cars. I would only buy cars that were actual models. I had no interest in any of these, like, Dragon, whatever the heck they were called, I don't even know. But I remember going with my mother one time to this lady's house where she had like a secondhand store of some sort, and she had some Matchbox there, and I traded in one of my Matchbox for another one, and I think I got like 50 cents trading credit and gave her another quarter, 50 cents for this other one. And of course it was one of the cars I had filled with clay, and I don't know why I filled some Matchboxes with clay, but I would use clay to make roads and make off-road type scenarios because you couldn't make those with carpet. And my mother told me afterwards, she goes, she was really kind to take that clay-filled Matchbox in on trade from you, but my trading, my habits for switching cars started at a very early age. While I didn't have the foresight to order a real Prowler and make a bunch of money on it, I did order a Matchbox Prowler. Now, they came out with a regular one, but if you remember, they had the Premier Edition Matchboxes, and they came with an actual box. They had real rubber tires with white lettering on them. They had painted headlights, more detail to them. And so I was trying to collect all of those. And I found out that they were coming out with a Prowler. So I was super excited. So I went to the local Rennie's, which is a department store up there, and they were the best place to get Matchbox. and I filled out one of their special order forms for a Premier Edition Prowler. And the ladies were all very nice. They were just happy to see a kid with some enthusiasm, and they treated me very kindly. And I don't know, a week, a month, a year goes by. It felt like an eternity, but I have no concept of what time was looking back. And they called me and said, your Prowler is in. And super excited, I went up there with my mom to pick it up, and they present it to me. And there was, of course, a few people around, because I guess this was kind of a big deal to them. No kid had ever ordered a Matchbox from them before. So they wait to see the elation on my face, and I look at the Prowler, and I'm shattered. I'm crestfallen. And they're like, well, what's wrong? I go, it's silver. They're like, yeah, what's wrong? So? I'm like, they don't make the Prowler in silver. They only make it in purple. Like, why would you want a purple car? I'm like, because that's the only color they make the Prowler in. Like, what don't you get? Like, I don't want a silver Prowler. It's not real. So I guess my discerning taste, others call it privilege or being spoiled, but my discerning taste started early. But I wanted what I wanted because they only made a purple Prowler. But I took it anyway, and I didn't really have any other option, because Matchbox at the time didn't yet make a purple Prowler, which they did come out with in their normal line shortly after that. The saying goes that adult car obsessions begin 97 cents at a time, which was very much true in some sense, but I think my expensive tastes / diva mentality with cars started maybe $3 or $4 at a time with the Premier Editions. And of course, starting with Matchbox, trading them, buying, selling, pre-ordering them, was certainly a foreshadowing of what I do now, which is just with larger cars, although I definitely don't fill them with clay anymore.
I'd like to thank the guys at Avalon King for supporting the channel this month. If you want to try it out yourself, there's a link in the description below.